And thank you so much for joining us on CBN NewsWatch AM. From Graham. Ahead today, Israel taking a major step to defend itself against terrorism by labeling some Palestinian rights groups as terrorists. We're going to hear a reaction from the U.S. A deadly new nuclear missile threat from China that the U.S. has no defense against. Plus, it's evidence that can't be overlooked, pointing to God and away from atheism.
I keep bumping into outrageous evidence for God, like really outrageous, the kind that I've never bumped into in my life before.
We'll hear what he told CBN News about that amazing evidence. And John Cooper of the Christian band Skillet challenges Christians on the big issues.
We went from, no, we wouldn't do that because that's not what America does, all the way to Christians saying, if you really love somebody, you'll mandate a vaccine. That is the power of propaganda.
What Cooper has to say as he takes on big topics like the debate over vaccine mandates. Those stories and more are ahead.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
And we begin in Israel, which has taken action to defend itself by classifying 6 Palestinian rights organizations as terrorist groups. Chris Mitchell brings us the story now from Jerusalem.
Israel's Ministry of Defense says the 6 groups operate as an organized network under the leadership of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, or PFLP. The U.S., along with Israel and its allies, consider the group to be a terrorist organization.
The decision was made on a factual and legal basis after this issue was examined in the Ministry of Justice, and in this sense, it relies on a solid basis.
The Palestinian Authority condemned the move, and Palestinian activists from the groups called on the international community to help reverse the decision.
Closing the organizations and declaring them as a terrorist organizations, which it will affect their work on a daily basis. They will affect their programs. They will affect their stuff.
The U.S. stopped short of condemning Israel, but State Department spokesman Ned Price said Israel gave the U.S. no advance warning.
We believe respect for human rights, fundamental freedoms, and a strong civil society are critically important to responsible and responsive governance. We'll be engaging our Israeli partners for more information regarding the basis for these designations.
Israel's internal security apparatus says the groups constitute a lifeline for the PFLP, raising funds and money laundering, employing and financially compensating terrorists, and facilitating the recruitment of activists to the military arm of the PFLP. Olga Deutsch, vice president of NGO Monitor, says her organization has been trying to show the connection between humanitarian groups and terror organizations like the PFLP for years.
Increasingly over the years, we have seen connections. They go to conferences, they share the same platforms. They have Shawan Jabarin, the head of al-haq, which is one of the most prominent Palestinian human rights groups, representing PFLP in many formal meetings.
Deutsch says the paradox is that the Palestinian people are the victims of the scam. Instead of being served by true human rights groups, their needs are hijacked for political and terrorist causes.
I want to talk about this a bit more with Chris Mitchell, who's joining us now. So, Chris, why is this so important to Israel?
Well, first of all, it exposes what some have been warning about, like Olga Deutsch there with the NGO Monitor, that these human rights groups actually serve a dual purpose, that they present a human face on a terror organization. As she was mentioning, the NGOs of the PFLP, they have a military branch, the PFLP, they have a political branch and an NGO branch. What could also do is cut off funding from European countries that have actually been helping the PFLP for a number of years and weakens a group. The PFLP is dedicated to the destruction of Israel, so hopefully for Israel's sake, it will weaken that group.
Chris, how will this affect Israel's coalition government?
Well, actually, what it does, Ephraim, is exposes the kind of coalition right now. We've talked about this a lot, especially during the many elections. And when the government was being formed, they had parties from the far left and to the far right. For example, Meretz and Labor, these are two of the far left parties. They criticized Benny Gantz. And they said, let's show us the evidence and that this actually harms these human rights groups. Other parties, on the other hand, on the right, came to the defense of Benny Gantz. And so this is just one of the many issues that the current government disagrees on. And actually, in just a couple of weeks, Ephraim, they're looking at a budget they have to pass by November 14th. If they don't pass that budget, then Israel will go to new elections.
There are two other major disagreements between the U.S. and Israel. What are they, and could they affect the government of Naftali Bennett?
Ephraim, they can affect not only the government, but major have an impact on U.S.-Israel relations. Number one is the idea of a consulate in Jerusalem for the Palestinian Authority. Back in 2018, the Trump administration took that consulate away and put it under the authority of the U.S. Embassy that he put back here in Jerusalem. The implications are, in effect, that it would reverse that Trump decision, but many believe it would also lead to the division of of Jerusalem, because that would perhaps lead many other countries to recognize the Palestinian Authority's right to Jerusalem. They could move their consulate here and their embassies, and leading to the division of the city. The other issue, Ephraim, is the biblical land of Judea and Samaria. Israel just authorized 3,000 new homes in what many call the West Bank, but many of these people in Judea and Samaria believe it's the biblical heritage and heartland of Israel. The U.S. is criticizing that decision, and this also leads to another division within Bennett's government. The far left is criticizing the authority for these 3,000 new homes. The right-wing parties, they want this, and just exposing these divisions on the eve of, as I mentioned, this budget deadline on November 14th.
All right, Chris Mitchell reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you so much for your time. Back here at home, Democrats say they're closing in on a deal on President Biden's massive spending plan. The president met with West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin and Majority Leader Chuck Schumer Sunday. But the details still have to be worked out, and Republicans are still united in their opposition. Our Mark Martin is on this story.
President Biden called Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Joe Manchin to his Delaware home Sunday, wanting to nail down the details on the social spending and climate change package. The Associated Press reports Manchin appears to be willing to agree with the White House plan for new taxes on billionaires and some corporations. Manchin is pushing back on the president's climate change agenda. For example, a proposal that would make utility companies switch to clean energy was let go. That's leading some to wonder how Biden can meet his emission reduction goals. Democrats say even a cut-down spending plan will lead to important changes for the country.
We can afford to do this. We can't afford not to do it.
Other items, including expanding Medicare for seniors to include free dental, hearing, and vision coverage, are still being negotiated.
Dental is very expensive, so hearing and visual and dental, but dental will take a little longer to implement.
Speaker Pelosi says Democrats will be able to foot the bill of the spending plan, which still could be near $2 trillion. Democrats are mulling over new taxes on the nation's billionaires. Progressive leaders now say if a deal is hammered out with the spending plan, they'll be ready to give the nod to the president's other bill dealing with traditional infrastructure.
I'm confident that the president will be able to give his word to the House caucus that he has that agreement, and that would then facilitate the vote on the infrastructure bill.
Democratic lawmakers say they hope to vote on the infrastructure bill by the middle of this week. The White House would like for the president to be able to attend the UN Climate Summit with wins on the home front. Mark Martin, CBN News.
Coming up, the latest deadly threat from China, a super-fast missile that gives the Chinese the power to make a nuclear strike anywhere in the world without warning. We're going to have the details when we come back.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts, in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain. Get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
China tested a hypersonic missile that flies 5 times the speed of sound and can strike anywhere without warning. The U.S. has no defense against it, and it's just one weapon in the Chinese arsenal of military might. Now it looks like America will have to play catch-up in this arms race. Brody Carter is on the story.
China denied they test-launched a hypersonic missile into space this summer after a Financial Times report that it circled the entire Earth and landed within 25 miles of its target.
The U.S. does not currently have the ability to even track this weapon, much less defeat it. It will give the Chinese the ability to conduct a nuclear strike anywhere in the world without warning.
The missile, capable of carrying a nuclear warhead, reportedly circled the entire globe at 5 times the speed of sound. This comes as China works to build up its strategic and nuclear weapons systems. Both China and Russia have tested hypersonics. The U.S. has not.
We've made clear our concern about the military capabilities that the PRC continues to pursue.
Other feats of military strength include more than 250 missile silos built for nuclear warheads in China's western desert, seen in this satellite photo near the city of Yumen. They've also deployed nuclear ballistic missiles launched from submarines. China's military expansion goes beyond missiles and other weapons into cutting-edge technology. The Pentagon's chief software officer recently resigned because he thinks China will dominate important areas like artificial intelligence in the years ahead. He told the Financial Times, "We have no competing fighting chance against China in 15 to 20 years. Right now, it's already a done deal. It is already over, in my opinion."
I think we're having, as a country, a very hard time getting our hands around exactly how to deal with this kind of high-tech challenge from a non-democratic competitor.
China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the missile was a routine test of a spacecraft to verify reusability of the technology, but went on to warn the U.S. and Canada to avoid provoking war.
That suggests that China is either preparing to be able to fight a nuclear conflict or it's trying to deter escalation to the nuclear level if there's a conventional conflict. Either way, that's a concerning pattern of behavior.
But this is the decade of concern, as they say, so our weapons development should be put on an accelerated basis.
And if we don't, what would happen?
We could lose a war.
The intelligence community has warned that China is rapidly expanding its military capabilities. The question now is, how will the U.S. respond? Brody Carter, CBN News.
Still ahead, the evidence is abundant against atheism, how one popular radio host and commentator put it all together and says it's hard to overlook. We've got the story for you coming up after this.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
There's incredible and astounding evidence against atheism. That is according to best-selling author and radio host Eric Metaxas. He asks and answers those questions in his newest book. CBN's Jenna Browder talked with Eric about the book and the surprising conclusion that the book reveals.
Is atheism dead? Yes, says Eric Metaxas, and not only that, he says science, archaeology, and history all point to a creator now more than ever.
I have literally never been as excited about a book.
From Bonhoeffer and Amazing Grace, the story of William Wilberforce, to Martin Luther, best-selling author and radio host Eric Metaxas is out with his newest book, Is Atheism Dead?
I'm not really particularly taking on atheism. That's a part of the book, but I'm framing it in the way that I do with the title Is Atheism Dead? Particularly because in 1966, Time magazine had this infamous cover article that said, Is God Dead?
And that got him thinking.
I thought, I keep bumping into outrageous evidence for God, like really outrageous, the kind that I've never bumped into in my life before.
He points to two specific examples.
One has to do with the discovery of biblical Sodom, which is astonishing.
In roughly 1650 BC, the city east of the Jordan called Tal el-Hammam was destroyed by a meteor. Scientists now believe the city could be the site of Sodom, the ancient biblical city destroyed for its wickedness.
The other is having to do with the idea of where did life come to begin with, right? We always talk about evolution, but we never talk about 4 billion years ago, you scientists say life emerged on planet Earth as single cells, but nobody really can explain how did that happen. So these things kicked it off. And I thought, there is so much evidence from science besides the one that I just mentioned. There's so much evidence from archaeology besides biblical Sodom. I thought maybe I need to write a book where I present a lot of the evidence that I've had the privilege of bumping into that other people might not know about, including most believers. I thought it has piled up over the years and the decades like snow, overnight. You don't hear it, and suddenly you wake up in the morning, you think, where did this come from? And it's, drifts against the door, 3 feet high.
Eric addresses it all, laying out the evidence for God.
We've come to a place in science and in history where we can now know. Before, maybe we couldn't, but we can now know that science is compatible with Christian faith, and that in fact it was Christian faith that led to modern science. Tremendous irony when you think of this secular narrative we've been dealing with roughly since Darwin.
On the contrary, he says any more science, archaeology, and history simply do not support a godless creation.
So we've been living with this kind of myth, this lie that science and scientists are at odds with faith. That's profoundly untrue. And I would even go a step farther and quote my friend John Lennox, the great mathematician who's written on this subject, and I quote him a lot in the book, but he says that it's not just that science and faith are compatible. What is incompatible with science is atheism. That's a shock. That's a headline. You know, that's the man bites dog kind of headline.
He says today in 2021, the question isn't, is God dead, but is atheism dead?
Science at least points to a creator God, a tremendous intelligence. The greatest atheists of the 20th century, Antony Flew, Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, all of them, the ones who took atheism the most seriously, eventually realized that it was more rational to believe in a God than in no God.
Eric says his book isn't just for Christians. He says it's for anyone wrestling with life's biggest questions. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Coming up, Skillet's John Cooper talks faith and culture with FaithWire's Dan Andros and tackles the debate over vaccine mandates with some words from Scripture. We're going to have that story for you when we come back. Stay with us.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Skillet's John Cooper is building a following, not just for his music, but for addressing some of the biggest cultural issues of the day with Scripture. FaithWire's Dan Andros talked with him about why he decided to do more than just shut up and sing in today's world as a follower of Christ.
One of the big ones that you've covered on the Cooper Stuff podcast, the vaccine mandates. It has been just kind of this issue that's not going away. There's always a new variant, you know, COVID, the Delta is sort of falling away, but now there's the Delta Plus, and there's always a new one that is coming out. And of course, what we've seen is, just to set the stage here a little bit, President Biden has, of course, issued vaccine mandates for federal workers and for companies with 100 or more employees. And then on the other side, in response, you have places like Texas and Florida. In Texas, the governor there, Abbott, banned companies from being able to do these sort of vaccine mandates. So, John, where do you want to start as Christians? How should we be responding to all this? What's your reaction when you see all this?
I mean, just to say a few things to start, I hate that you have to give caveats for everything, but yeah. one has to give many caveats. Otherwise, somebody will take one little snippet from this. You have to divide up the conversation. I have never said in any of my Cooper Stuff podcasts, I have never told someone not to get a vaccine. I have never told someone to get a vaccine. That's not my decision. That's your decision. but they're changing the definitions of what anti-vax means. I am not anti-vax. They've added a definition that says if you're against vaccine mandates, then you're now anti-vax. So people need to, us Christians, we need to get our brains ready for what this leftist authoritarianists are do. They come in, they change language, and by changing language, you can end up changing people's minds about stuff, because you say it and people might think you mean one thing, but what you're actually saying is another thing. Yeah. And the more you repeat the propaganda, your brain gets used to it, which I'm going to go back to that propaganda in a second. The reason that I am so passionate about this is because us Christians need to wake up to this incredible threat of tyranny that is happening from the government. Think about how the way that propaganda has worked here. Not 9 months ago, 8 months ago, maybe, the president himself was saying, no, we would not institute vaccine mandates. That's not what we do in America. Dr. Fauci said the same thing. Jen Psaki had repeated that thing. This is all within the last 7 or 8 months. Look at what has happened in such a short period of time that we went from, no, we wouldn't do that because that's not what America does, all the way to Christians saying, if you really love somebody, you'll mandate a vaccine. That is the power of propaganda. Micah 6:8, we repeat this all the time. In fact, everybody on every side of this issue repeats it, but think about it. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Now, we use that scripture for all sorts of things. Usually we use that scripture for social justice, helping the poor and things like that, which is true. But walking humbly with your God is not just something that I do as an individual. This is telling us what it means to have justice in the land. Part of what walking humbly means is that the government has to realize what its godly role is in society, right? Because Christ is Lord of the nations, isn't he? Christ is Lord of all. Christ is Lord of heaven and earth. He is ruling at the right hand of the Father in the midst of his enemies as we speak. He is the Lord of all. So what does it mean for a nation to act humbly? It means that that nation would do its, what I would call its job under the sovereignty of Christ. And it would not step into God's job or the family's job, things like that.
And you can catch more of Dan's interview with John Cooper this evening at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time on Faith vs. Culture. You can find it on the CBN News Channel or your CBN News app. Time now for your Monday Motivation, and here's a word for you. You may be down, but you're not out. If you have a pulse, you've got a purpose. Get busy planning your future and not your funeral. God has a plan for you, a hope and a future. With that word, I encourage you to make this a marvelous Monday, and be sure to have yourself a wonderful week and do it on purpose. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. I want to remind you, you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. Again, I encourage you to make this a marvelous Monday. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye. God bless.